Okay, one more additional thing that I'd like to add to our scene here is an accessory for this fellow who is wearing a yellow cap now, yellow ski cap. I'm going to go over to one of the accessories that I threw into the support images here. I'm going to grab a button. We can use our elliptical marquee tool to grab one of these buttons. I'm going to just go over here and grab the rehumanize button, which I think would be a nice thing for him to wear. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key and the Option key, or the Alt key on the Mac, sorry, the Alt key on Windows, and drag that circle out from the center. And one little tip while I'm holding down the Alt or Option and Shift key, if I can also hold down the space bar, you get to be a little bit of a piano player here, hold down the space bar while you're sizing, you've got the mouse button held down, you can move that over a little bit. So that's the Alt or Option and Shift plus the keyboard, the space bar as well, allows you to move that on the fly. So do your best to sort of select the outside of that button. Here I've got that selected pretty easily. Control copy to copy that, and I'm going to bring it over to my demo image. Control V or Command V to bring that button into our image. Now I need to resize that. Again, we want to use the transform tool in the edit menu. From the keyboard, that's Control T to resize that image, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key while I'm resizing to constrain that proportion to a perfect circle. And I'm going to bring this over and drag this over onto his chest here, maybe make that a little bit smaller, looks a bit more normal, and I can always rotate that if I don't like exactly the position it's in. Right, by holding the mouse outside of the control handle there till it turns into a half circle, sort of two-headed arrow, and then hit return or click on the check mark in the options palette to accept those changes. And there we have a button on his shirt. And maybe I can add a little bit of a drop shadow to that. We saw how to do those layer effects in the lower third assignment. You double click on the layer. Again, I'm going to just rename my layers here before I save it. Button. And this layer is my hat layer. Oops. Hat. Do that. All right. And now I think we've got all of our layers named, and we've got 5 different objects that we've added to this image, which is the amount that I'd like you to do for this class. I'm going to double click on the button layer to get the layer styles dialog box, and I'm going to add a little drop shadow underneath that button. You can see that comes in a little bit bigger than I want it. So I turn the spread down, change the direction here by grabbing this little icon and moving that around. That will put the drop shadow, I believe, underneath if I drag it up this direction. Put my size down a little bit, the spread down a little bit, increase the distance slightly so it looks like that button is now sitting up on top of his shirt, his turtleneck sweater. Okay, that looks pretty good. Click OK. And we'll save our file. I think we're pretty much done. I could go ahead and add a few more things if I wanted to turn this into a magazine cover. I could add some text into this image. So let's do that real quickly. I'll go to my text tool that we used, as you will recall, in the lower third project. Click here in the background. And I will go to my properties palette, and you can see I've got a fairly large type size selected here of 360 pixels, 360 points, and I've got font selected called Minion Variable Concept. We'll change that to something a little more predictable like Times Let's see, Times, we have Times? Yes, Times New Roman. And I will make this an outdoors magazine, so outdoors. All right, that looks pretty good. Just hold down the control key to get to the move tool, and I can drag that down in front of his cap there if we wanted to. If we wanted to put that behind the image, right, we could drag that layer with the text on it down so that it's behind his cap. That looks kind of good. Looks like outdoors. So maybe we can drag that. Whoops, selected the wrong layer there. Go back to our text layer and click on the letters themselves and drag those around. Maybe so we can see the D a little bit better. That looks pretty good. Okay, so we've got Outdoors Magazine. I think I like it a little bit better in front. So again, I'm going to drag that up in front of his hat so that I can center that a bit better. Sorry, keep dragging the background. Click on the, oh, that's kind of nice with the D sort of right there in the pom-pom of his hat. Okay, so I like that. I'm going to go with that. Maybe I'll change the color there of my outdoors. I think it might be nice if I made it a nice warm orange in front of his cap. So I'm going to go to my Properties palette here and click on the color button for that text. And that will allow me to choose a different color. Red looks pretty good, but I think I want to go with a kind of an orange color. Something a little bit redder. Looks pretty good. A little bit darker, perhaps. A little bit more saturated. Try out different colors here by clicking around. Maybe a little bit redder from there. That looks pretty good. Okay, so I'll click OK. Now maybe it would be nice to give that a little bit of an outline. So again, I can double click on my text layer, and that gives me my layer style palette. And I want to add an outline. And in this case, that is known as a stroke, which we'll work with a lot more once we get to Illustrator. And the opacity I want to be 100%, but I want to change the color here to make it a darker stroke color. That looks pretty good. Turn that scale down just slightly so we're accenting those letters just a little bit. Click OK. Excuse me. And that looks pretty good. We've got our Outdoors Magazine. If this were truly a magazine, maybe we'd add another line of text here. Maybe we can come over here and instead of just clicking and adding text, maybe what we'll do is add a text box so that we can put our text into it. So I'm going to click and drag out a marquee with the text tool, and that will give me a box to be able to put my text into. We'll decrease the size of our text till we have something that is looks more like text on a magazine cover, and we'll say how to pack for the vacation of a lifetime. Terrific. Okay, so we've got our text. Maybe we'll make that a little bit bigger. Make that up to 125. That's a little bit too big, so we'll knock that back down to 100. And that looks pretty good, except I've got some weird line breaks here. So we'll make our text box a little bit bigger. That looks better. And we can move that text around if we want to. We can move that down here so it's a little bit nicer, or we can move it over here. That looks great. I'm going to leave it there. And we'll click a different color. Maybe we'll make that white. Nope. Black. That looks better. Times New Roman isn't really working for me. I think maybe we want to go with a little bit different, maybe a sans serif font like Calibri. Looks pretty good. Not too crazy about that. How about Century Gothic? That looks great for the magazine cover. It's a little bit bigger font, so we're going to have to move it back up a little bit. That looks amazing. My vacation there has been also split, so I want to maybe decrease the size of my font back down to 72. That looks great. Everything is laying out really well. Vacation's still cut off, so maybe we'll increase that. Okay, how about that? Now we'll move it back over here. How does that look? Maybe we'll put it up here. Ah, there we go. How to pack for a vacation of a lifetime. Make that a little bit smaller so that we have vacation. And if we need to, we can play around with this text a little bit. Vacation, how to pack for the vacation of a lifetime. That looks good. All right, took a lot of time playing around with that. Okay, good. Maybe we'll make those a little bit closer together. We can come over here to our tracking tool and we can just turn the tracking down on that to about 25. That makes it a little bit tighter, the text a little bit tighter. And we can click on another layer and that looks pretty good. Okay, now it's time to save our file and we want to save that so that we can turn it in. And we'll go up to the File menu, Save, or in my case, I'm going to choose Save As because I already had this file saved. Save As, and I will save it here into my Compositing Assets folder. You could save it to the desktop if you wanted to. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it Self-Portrait, which is the assignment that we're doing. And then underscore Lovell, which is my last name, and I'm going to save it as a PSD file so that I can keep all of my layers intact. And for when you turn this in, I will want the PSD file. Of course, you will upload a link to this from your OneDrive folder. So I would be saving this into my OneDrive folder if I were you. Click Save. And that will save the image with all of the layers intact. If you want to save a JPEG of this, you could either do a screen snip of it here in Photoshop, or you can go to the File, Export menu, and Save for Web Legacy is the one that I usually choose when I'm saving things for the web. And that will flatten your image into a single layer. Right? And I can drag around in this preview window, see that it looks pretty good, and then I can click Save. I'm saving here as a JPEG. I can save as a GIF or a PNG file here as well. I'm going to save it as a JPEG, click Save, and that will prompt me to save it to the desktop. And I have now saved it as a PSD file that I can go in and re-edit again, as well as a JPEG file that I can use to upload to an online social media outlet or send to someone via email, or if I wanted to post that in Blackboard, posting a JPEG is probably fine. Right, so hope that helps bring you up to speed using those selection tools. We've gone over a lot of things in this workshop. Most of them I think will be very useful to you, and hopefully that will augment what we did in class. Don't forget that there's also the recording that we did in class going over a lot of these tools, and I went over them in slightly different ways, and that should give you a good idea of how to complete the self-portrait assignment.